Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show. Hey, John Picks, the other half of the show, the Parlay, joining me in to break down some UFC Tampa. But before we do that, let's talk about last week's pay-per-view, UFC 310. I was there in attendance in Las Vegas. So if you met up with me, it was a pleasure to chat with you. I was in the Bud Light Lounge. There's a bunch of fighters in there, one of fighters that are actually on this card. So maybe I have a little bit of insight onto what that fighter was doing last Saturday. But either way, it was a pretty solid card overall. I believe we both made some money. How'd it go for you? What were your big cashes?
Yeah, man, it went awesome. I thought some of the lines were off for violence. I got Hooper Guida to end inside 2 rounds at like minus 120. Let's see. I got Kennedy and Zechiku and Lucas Dresky to end inside 2 rounds at like minus 125. Those are 2 big ones right off the bat. We went up 4 units right away. I had Duho Choi on the money line for a unit. Basically, my only 2 that I missed, I think went 5 and 2 total on bets. All my big bets hit. The only ones I missed was Max Griffin, who looked awful, and the under in the Cody Durden and Joshua Van fight. Everything else cash went up 4.15 units. Felt really good the whole night. It was a lot of fun to watch. I know you hit pretty big too.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I had 4 unders, I think, on the card, or 3 unders. No, I had 4 unders, and I cashed 3 out of 4. The one that did not hit was the Durden Van one, which, Durden just got the piss beat out of him for 3
Badly,
rounds.
yeah.
So, that is what it is. But also cashed a plus 200 on the Weidman Anders, plus 155 on Temba Luque. And I had the over 2.5 in the Shavkat Gary fight, which was pretty much a no sweat. Would have been nice if Ian Gary didn't give up those first 2 rounds, and I could have cashed the plus 700 on Ian Gary decision. But we lost that one. We hit the Luque sub. That was a nice little one there. Duho Choi on the money line. And then my biggest bet of the weekend was Movsar Evlev parlayed with Alexandre Pantoja, which was, I don't want to say it was a no sweat because Movsar had me puckering a little bit in that first round when he just wasn't getting off the body lock. But overall, I think he did enough to win those last 2 rounds and get a dub. And then Pantoja getting it done pretty easily. Wish I would have went a little bit harder on Pantoja inside the distance. I was thinking about it, but I already had 2 units on him, so I just kind of laid off. Didn't want to force anything. But either way, positive 5.76 units on the sportsbook plays and another 2 units added on for the DFS plays. So on the year, I am now positive 92.67 units. So hopefully,
cracking 100.
Crack 100 on this last UFC Tampa card to close out 2024. If we don't, either way, it's been a great year. And last week was a nice little profit across the board as far as the sportsbook and the DFS. DFS just continues to roll. So looking forward to this weekend. I'll be there live in attendance again in Tampa. So maybe that's the good luck charm. Just got to be in the building and we can smash some bets. What do you think of the card this week?
Yeah, last one of the year. There's some good matchups. There's some guys that, if they lose this fight, I don't know what they really do next. Colby Covington being one. And then there's some good, prospects too. Daniel Marquez, undefeated, going up against a tough, hard hitter. And Yanez, Navajo Sterling making his debut off of the Contender Series knockout. And then guys like Michael Johnson, again, in that older category. But good violence fights. Drakkar Klose, Joel Alvarez. There's a lot of fun fights on the card.
I think there's some good matchups. Maybe not the name value you'd get on a pay-per-view card, especially 310 had some pretty solid name value on the prelims as well. But overall, solid card. Excited to watch these fights. Go through them. We'll give you a breakdown and we'll give you a pick. But if you want the bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks Premium membership. You got 1 week left in 2024, and then we got a few weeks off, and then we'll be back at it with an Apex card to kick it off in January. But as we just kind of alluded to, it's been a profitable year. So if you want to get in on the last card of the year, there's a link down in the description. You can join there. You get all of our bets for UFC Tampa. I have a big bet out for UFC Tampa that I gave out a few weeks ago. I think it's about a week and a half ago. And I just dropped my DFS plays earlier today. So I got all those locked in. As I said earlier, those have been money makers. So make sure you tail those. Without any further ado, what do you say? We hop into it with the first fight of the night?
Your favorite fight, the reason you bought tickets.
That's right. Once I saw Josephine Knutsson and Piera Rodriguez on this card, I had the cop. Piera Rodriguez coming in as a plus 190 dog. Knutsson comes back at minus 250. Still undefeated. She's coming off a pretty solid fight, but it was a close one against Julia Palastri, Piera Rodriguez 2-fight losing streak, where she probably should have had a win her last time out, but she headbutted Ariane Carnellosi and got DQ'd. That was a bad beat for me. I think it might have been for you as well.
Yep.
Where, I really love Piera Rodriguez in that fight. She was looking great. Had landed a knockdown in the second round. She's on top, smashes her in the head, and they DQ her, which to me was kind of surprising because usually they end that with like a no contest, but I guess they deemed it intentional. It is what it is. We take an L on that one, but maybe that loss on the record is caked into this line because, to be honest, plus 190 on Piera Rodriguez doesn't look too bad. I mean, I like Knutsson. I think she's a solid kickboxer. I think she's pretty fast. I think she's very skilled, but she is still fairly green, and I don't think Piera Rodriguez is some bump. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I feel similar. I think, if Piera comes in here with a wrestling heavy style, it's only going to take one takedown per round, and I think she holds Knutsson down for the most part. I mean, we saw Knutsson against Palastri. She got taken down 3 times. She's almost content to fight off of her back at times. She doesn't have a whole lot of urgency getting back up to her feet, which is surprising because, on the feet, she usually has the advantage over these girls. She's extremely fast. Her kickboxing is good. Seems to hold a little sting in her punches too. And she's landed good volume in her last 2 fights. Granted, one was against Marnik Mann, who I think landed 8 strikes to hurt 81 in that match. But the last one against Palastri, like Julia Palastri is not a bad fighter. She just went out there and beat Corey McKenna, where she landed nearly 90 significant strikes. So that's a good win for Knutsson. But Piera is I think she's going to be slightly stronger. She's stockier. She's not real fast with the striking. She's kind of she doesn't have the best movement either. She's kind of sitting a little bit still, just kind of, I don't know, sitting down on her punches. But seems to have a little power, not much speed. But if she can get takedowns here, man, I do think this line, should be closer to pick 'em. If you knew she was going to have success with the wrestling, I think this is a very close fight. Value is on Piera Rodriguez. I'm just worried it's going to be one of those value plays that ends up a loser based off damage. Because I do think on the feet, Knutsson will be much faster. And I don't think Piera is going to have a whole lot of success landing on her in that category. So I'm going to take Josephine Knutsson for the pick. I think the adversity she faced in her last fight is going to be good for her going forward. Is she dating Hamzat? Is that a thing? Or they just trained together?
I've never heard of that.
You never heard that? I feel like I saw it on Twitter, people talking about it. I know she's out of All-Stars. If she is, man, she's probably been working on that wrestling. So I don't know. I'm going to take her for the pick. I think she's a better striker and she's going to do more damage, but just can't get taken down.
It's an interesting angle.
I'm going to look it up while you give your take.
Well, I think Knutsson should have lost that fight against Palastri. If Palastri had any type of fight IQ, she would have went to the grappling. I mean, she landed a takedown in every single round, but the first round she waited until there was like 20 seconds left. And the third round, she waited until there was a minute 15 left. So if you get the takedown at the end of the round and don't really do much with it, you're not going to win the round with a takedown. But she landed 3 of 3 takedowns. So I think if Palastri didn't start slow and if she had any fight IQ, she would have took that fight to the ground a lot quicker than she did. And I think Piera Rodriguez can get some takedowns here. I don't think Knutsson has the greatest takedown defense. I mean, Palastri is a scrapper, and I actually like Palastri, but her fight IQ is just not there. I think if Piera Rodriguez comes into this fight with a solid game plan of I'm going to wrestle her, I'm going to close the distance, I'm going to get into the clinch, push her up against the cage wrestle, I think she can land some. So at plus 190, I don't think it's a terrible line, and I think she's probably the value side in this one. But like you said, we've just seen so many of these value losers where a plus 200 underdog looks, minus 110. And it goes to a decision where she just barely loses 2 of the 3 rounds. And the favorites have just been rolling. I mean, last card, there was only 2 underdogs that came through, and they both got finishes. Duho Choi and Vicente Luque, the only underdogs. And then you look at a Cyril Gane, who's minus 400, getting a gifted decision. And, even an Evloev Aljamain. Aljamain looked more like minus 150, minus 110. So it's probably going to be a close fight. It's probably a fight that goes to a decision. And at that point, you're up to the mercy of the judges, whether they like the Piera Rodriguez getting some takedowns. or if they like Knutsson's, pitter patter on the feet and what she does. I don't know. So for me, it's Pura Rodriguez. I'll take her for the pick. She is the value side, in my opinion.
Knutsson and Hamzat not dating, just teammates, I believe.
You never know. Teammates
Yeah, you never know.
could be doing a little bit more than just
Wrestling partners.
No, we'll see. Moving on. We got Davy Grant taking on Ramon Tavaras. Tavaras comes in as minus 136. Davy Grant, the slight underdog at plus 106. So I mentioned at the top of the show, I was in the Bud Light Lounge. There was multiple UFC fighters in there, none of them that high level. Saw Charles Johnson, saw O'Day Osborne, Jessica Penne. Your girl, Juliana Miller, was also the one man that I looked at and I was like, what is he doing here? It's Davy Grant. Davy Grant was at the fights on Saturday, and I didn't expect to see him there, obviously. And I didn't realize until after the fights that he's fighting this week on UFC Tampa. So if I knew that while I was there, I probably would have kept a little bit more of an eye on him to see what he was doing at the Bud Light Lounge. So I'm kind of pissed at myself for that. But either way, he looked like he was in solid shape. Didn't obviously look drunk or anything. So it looked like he's in shape. And I checked out his Instagram. He's been training at Syndicate in Las Vegas for this camp, I guess, coming over to the U.S. and getting some work there. So that kind of makes sense. Yeah. I also went to Syndicate as well. Very nice gym, good people. And I think Davy Grant's probably got some good training in while he's been in Las Vegas. But he is 38 years of age. And Ramon Tavares is the younger guy here with a lot less miles than Davy Grant. So I can understand why Davy Grant would be a slight underdog here. But either way, I mean, he's got the experience. He's never been knocked out. Could be the time for him to get knocked out. But we got to remember, for the fight night, we're going to be using the new gloves. So not the OG gloves. We're using the Decisionator gloves. Take that for what you will. But what do you think about this fight?
Yeah, for Ramon Tavares, I really like his striking, to be honest. I think he's a really good boxer. And, in MMA, he's learned to mix in the leg kicks too. Saw it against Siri City. Siri City's a big guy for the division. He comes forward. He has a lot of pressure and good cardio. And there was times when Tavares was teeing off on him, landed some good combinations of his own, hurt him, ended up winning the fight. I guess they had a rematch too, didn't they? I was thinking Contender Series. Hold on, let me get this straight. Which one won each fight?
City won on the Contender Series, early stoppage.
Yeah, early. Yeah, okay, yeah. And then he came in, and then was that in Canada when he beat City?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was outlanded by City in that spot, but he just had much more power. He was able to drop City, got his hand raised. Davy Grant, you mentioned it, man. He's older. He's been in a lot of wars. He's taken a lot of damage. He still can get wins at this level. I mean, like the inverted triangle he got over Rafael Assunção was sick, but Assunção is 40 years old. Luis Smolka, not really around anymore, but beating the Adrian Yanez's younger boxer, kind of like a Ramon Tavares, loses the Yanez, loses the Chito Vera, and loses the Daniel Marcos in a close fight. I just think the speed advantage for Ramon Tavares here is going to be a little bit too much. I think he's going to have more power if he mixes in the leg kicks and can just stuff takedowns. If Davy Grant wants to go that route, I just feel like he's going to have that advantage. The youth seems to win fights. This line is super close. Kind of surprisingly, I thought Tavares would be a tad bit bigger of a favorite. But Davy Grant is a veteran, has a ton of experience. That's what would make me nervous betting on Tavares here. But Tavares is younger, hungrier. That's why I got to stick with him for the pick. I don't know if I'm betting on him at this point. I don't know. The confidence level isn't really there for me.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me because I think this fight could actually play out pretty similar to the last Ramon Tavares fight with Serhi City, where Davy Grant's the one landed the volume, but Tavares is maybe landed the better shots. And Davy Grant's last fight against Daniel Marcos kind of went the same way. He's landing more often, kind of in and out footwork, landing a lot of kicks. But he didn't wear the damage very well. His nose started to bust, and in rounds 2 and 3, he was bloodied up, and I think that's probably why they gave Marcos the decision there. I don't know if that's warranted. It was weird because it was in Davy Grant's homeland, and they robbed him, in my opinion. And then Tavares got a robbery decision in enemy territory as well. So I think Tavaras probably going to land the better shots to the head, but Davy Grant's probably going to land more overall. At that point, it's up to the judges' discretion. Like, I don't know that either guy gets knocked out. Davy Grant's been very durable throughout his career. Tavares been chinned a couple times, but I don't think that city KO should have been stopped at all. He literally got dropped for like a split second and the ref
He was
jumped
sitting
in.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fight probably goes to a decision, and at that point, you're up to the judges. So for me, I'd probably rather go to the fight to go to a decision route than play either side. But we got to also factor in Davy Grant might have a little bit of grappling upside here. You know, he averages a little over a takedown per fight. Not something that he goes to all that often, but he is pretty dangerous once the fight hits the ground. And Tavares is more just a boxer with some decent takedown defense. Like he's not a guy that's going to be mixing in a ton of combinations with the kicks or shoot for takedowns. So he's a little bit limited in that aspect. But overall, for who I think is going to win, I'm just going to side with the slight underdog here in Davy Grant, who might have more ways to win, might have a little bit more experience. And I think he's probably going to be landing a little bit more. So I'll take Davy Grant as a slight dog.
You know what did surprise me in this though is like when I watch tape, it seems like Davy Grant's going to be the longer fighter, like just the way he fights and stuff.
Yeah,
And then I get to the stats, and he's actually got like a reach disadvantage or a 1-inch reach disadvantage, and they're both the same height. So yeah, it's interesting. I do think the boxing, the one thing that scares me on Davy Grant's side is that he wears damage like pretty badly. Like this guy's pale, his nose gets busted up, he's always bleeding. And like Daniel Marcos is a guy who does a lot of his work with the kicks. Ramon's kind of the opposite. He's a guy who will mix in the kicks, but he does a lot of his work with the hand. So, yeah, it should be a fun fight, though.
Yeah. Moving on, we got some women's MMA, more women's MMA. Minus 430 on Miranda Maverick. Jamie Lynn Horth comes back at plus 300. Horth is the older fighter by 7 years. She is coming off a win on UFC Edmonton, where it was a pretty close decision. And I'm not really sure if she won that fight against Ivana Petrovic. Miranda Maverick coming off a win over Dione Barbosa in July, which was a pretty nice performance for her. I mean, I don't think Dione Barbosa is a bad fighter by any means. I think she used her wrestling, used her top control, and got that one done that way. She's a big favorite here. What do you think of the line?
Yeah, I mean, minus 430 in WMMA is a little scary. And, you know, Jamie Lynn Horth is so big for the division. And it's like if Maverick has trouble closing the distance and, you know, can't get her striking going into her takedowns, and like Horth isn't just big for the division, like she's strong, she's in shape, she's long too. Like if she's not easy to take down, like it just makes me nervous for
Yeah.
Maverick. It's not like Maverick's this stud striker by any means. She's not bad by any means. She's pretty technical, but she doesn't have big power. That's not really her game. She wants to get you down, smother you, look for submissions, ground and pound. I just don't really see her having a strength advantage here over Jamie Lynn Horth. Do I think she's the better fighter? Yes. Do I think she should win? I do. I think she's going to have, you know, probably better cardio. She's got more experience, just overall better skills. But Jamie Lynn, just the size scares me here. I mean, we saw Miranda Maverick come in as a big favorite over Jasmine Jazz Devicius. I believe she's a bigger favorite, like minus
I think she's like minus 250, minus 300 somewhere.
in that range. And you know, size was a little bit too much. She couldn't wrestle Jasmine. She kind of got hit on the feet a little bit and lost the fight by unanimous decision. Everybody else she's fought, Priscilla Cachoeira, no takedown defense whatsoever. Andrea Lee, older. She beat Dione Barbosa, but man, she was kind of getting beat with those kicks early in the fight. So it's interesting, man. I think she should win, but this line is nothing I want any part of. I hear a lot of people parlaying Miranda Maverick this week. I just don't know how you can do it at this line.
Yeah, I'm not too crazy about it either. I mean, everyone talks about Miranda Maverick's biceps and everything. And I'm like, it's because she's 5'3". Like she's 5'3", fighting at 125. She's got to be yoked. You know, she's not the tallest girl. She's actually pretty short for the division. So she's got to be big and strong. So that's kind of a thing that gets thrown around there, is that she's so physical. It's like she has to be, otherwise she's screwed. And Jamie Lynn Horth is a huge girl who I just don't think she has the skills to really match up with Miranda. Like, even if she can compete physically with Miranda, I think ultimately Miranda's skill set is a lot better as far as getting fights to the ground, getting the fight where she wants it to be. And based on the last fight with Petrovic, you know, I think Miranda Maverick's probably a lot better grappler than Ivana Petrovic. I think Miranda Maverick probably gets takedowns, probably gets a good amount of top control, and probably wins this fight by a decision. I don't really see her getting a finish. But even against Haley Cowan is not a great fighter. I mean, she took her down twice in that fight and made that a nail biter to where Jamie Lynn Horth was sweating that decision. So, I think Miranda Maverick wins, but I'm not going to be playing her at minus 400, minus 500. If anything, just play the over if you want to parlay it. Like that's probably more safe, or play the
I agree.
decision or whatever. So, Miranda Maverick is the pick. We can move on from the women's MMA, and we'll move on to a nice little matchup here. Miles Johns comes in as a plus 200 underdog against Felipe Lima, sitting at minus 250. 26-year-old comes into the UFC, short notice, and just smokes what would have been one of my biggest cashes of the year. Okay. I'm always going to hold a grudge against Felipe Lima. Maybe I should hold up against Muhammad Naimov. Because I had the better picks, 8-legger, $100 to win $10K.
Oh, yeah.
And Felipe Lima subs him about a minute too early. And that was the only leg that didn't hit. So I think I should hold it against Naimov. I shouldn't hold it against Felipe Lima. He was going out there to do what he needed to do. But for a guy that was going to a good amount of decisions on the regional scene, I was like, where does this third-round gas tank come from, where you just being able to throw in subs? Either way, he looks great in that performance. He might have been down 2 rounds, but it was pretty close. It probably was very subjective on who you could give the rounds, but he looks sharp on the feet, looks like a solid striker, solid wrestler. And he's getting, in my opinion, just a weird matchup. Miles Johns is just such a wild card. Like, he's very physically imposing with his strength. It looks like guys don't want to throw anything when they're in there with Miles Johns. Like, I watch every Miles Johns fight. I'm like, why isn't his opponent throwing punches? And then you can kind of see it's like whenever his opponent throws punches, he just wings an overhand. So they're probably just scared of getting caught with a big overhand. And then up against the cage, he's very physically strong. He doesn't really get that many takedowns, but he's just a brick shithouse. At plus 200 for a guy that should be entering his prime against a guy that has one UFC fight, to me, it's kind of hard to look past, but maybe you can talk me off the edge.
No, I feel, pretty much the same way. I think this is another fight, though, like all the values on Johns, but a fight that he might just lose. Like, it's going to be a closer fight, but Lima, I think, is going to be faster on the feet. I think his striking's pretty good. I think he'll have more volume than Miles Johns. And, his first fight against Naimov was short notice, like very, very short notice, up at 145 pounds. So he didn't have to make a crazier weight cut. This one's down at 135. I think he's going to be faster. I think his grappling is going to be good. He's out of that Hamzat camp too. He fights to a lot of decisions, tells me his gas tank's going to hold up. I've seen Miles Johns really, really tired at the end of fights. If he tries to go the wrestling route, I think that's kind of what starts to wear him down. But again, Miles Johns is a guy that you look up and you think he's going to lose and somehow just powers through and gets the decision wins. So, yeah, plus 200. I don't know if I'm willing to take a shot just because, Lima, I do think is a better athlete. All the things I mentioned, faster, can grapple, going to have better striking. Things that scare me, like you said, it's only his second UFC fight. We've seen so many times these guys come into the UFC, have a crazy first performance, and then kind of not shit the bed in their second performance, but not look as good or kind of come down to earth. The one that comes to mind is it Felipe dos Santos, who came in against Manel Kape, looked insane in his debut against Manel Kape, and then goes down and fights. I forget who it was, like Vitor Altamirano or something, and looked terrible.
I think it was Victor. Victor
took
a bunch.
Oh yeah, Victor got robbed in that fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, things like that make me nervous. I'll take Felipe Lima for the pick, but yeah, I do think there is value if you're betting on this fight. I do think it's probably dog or pass on the money line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Miles Johns is a terrible dog, just because he's pretty defensive, man. Like, he's got an 85% takedown defense, 69% striking defense, and he just I think he's limited his mistakes. Like, when he goes into the octagon now, he's just going in there with the basics, jab, 1-2, overhand, stuff a takedown, put him up against the cage. He's not really looking to do too much. Like he's won his last 4 fights by decision, and he's just kind of done enough. And Felipe Lima, maybe he could fall into that trap, but I do kind of look at it stylistically, and I'm like, he's faster, probably pretty durable, got good wrestling, got good jiu-jitsu. Like, I could see why he's the favorite here. But personally, I'll probably pass on a Lima bet, but I'll take him for the pick. I'll probably pass on a Lima bet, but Miles Johns, if he comes to play, like he's definitely a live dog. One thing I do want to note is the Miles Johns, something I've kind of been keeping an eye on is like guys that fight at the Apex very regularly, and then they finally hit live crowd. It's a big difference, man. Like you look at Temba Garimbo last week, his entire career has been at the Apex. And then the first time he steps in front of a live crowd, he gets sparked within a minute. Miles Johns' last 4 fights, he's been at the Apex. Actually, 5 fights. Been at the Apex. It's a little bit different once you step into the big octagon, under the bright lights, live crowd. At least this is earlier on the prelims. I don't know how many people are going to be there. If it was in Vegas, there'd be nobody there. But either way, I think Miles Johns could possibly pull off an upset, but he's just got to do a little bit more for me to like him here.
He does win a lot of fights, man. It's crazy. He's 15-2. His only 2 losses. John Castaneda by submission, but the other one, Mario Batista, a guy who's knocking on the door at the top of the division. So
I kind of look at Felipe Lima kind of like a Batista.
Yeah.
Kind of very similar. Dynamic striker, solid wrestling, solid pace, So I could see why he's the favorite here, but it's a little bit rich for me.
Yep.
Moving on, we got Sean Woodson taking on Fernando Padilla. 2 tall, gangly motherfuckers. Padilla comes in at plus 146, Woodson minus 188. Woodson has been on a nice little run here, and he is facing a dangerous 27-year-old who loves to get the fight done inside the distance. Looking at his record, 16 wins, 5 KOs, 9 submissions. So very high finish rate for Fernando Padilla. Sean Woodson, on the other hand, likes to jab and kick his way to a decision. I mean, he's got 8 wins out of his 12 by decision. So kind of a clash of styles, but both very similar in their builds. I mean, Padilla's a long guy. Woodson, probably the longest featherweight you'll ever see. Yeah. 6'2", long ass legs, weird build. But he finds a way to make it work. He's not slow. He's fast hands, solid footwork. And I think this is going to be a great fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is about as close to evenly, with the attributes and height and reach as Sean Woodson's ever going to face in this division. Fernando Padilla is another guy who's extremely tall for the division. He's long, lanky. He's pretty dangerous too. Like if he gets his hands going, he's got some decent power. He's got a submission game like we saw in his last fight. I think if anybody at this level, the middle of the pack type of guys give somebody like Sean Woodson trouble, I think it's a Fernando Padilla, just based off the height and reach alone. Because you watch Sean Woodson fight, he gets a lot of his wins based on volume and his accuracy. He's not the fastest striker in the world. Like a lot of his punches, if you watch, that left hand kind of gets deflected off of his opponent's hands because they got time to block him and stuff. It's just he's such a pressure fighter. He gets the kicks going and he can wear guys down. With the one fight he really faced adversity with, and his only loss, or I guess it ended up being a draw in the UFC, was against Luis Saldana, another guy who's pretty tall for the division, and was able to crack him. Got inside, he was able to reach him. He was able to fight Sean Woodson in that closer range than Sean's used to, and he had a lot of success. So, Fernando's a similar guy here. I don't think his striking is going to be I don't think he's going to be outclassed enough to where Sean's not going to get hit. I think this is a pretty evenly keeled fight. I don't know, plus 146 on a dog here at Padilla, who is that dangerous, who does have the attributes, who can kind of match Woodson. Seems like a dog shot for me. So I'm going to take Fernando Padilla.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same way. And I look at it kind of from the Julian Erosa matchup with Woodson. Taller
Erosa, yeah.
Decent hands. Erosa's chin held up for the most part in that fight. And eventually got him done with a Darce choke in the 3rd round. And how did he do that? A lot of pressure, a lot of high volume, mixing in some takedowns. I think Padilla could maybe do that here. Like, I think Padilla's probably got a pretty good chin. He's never been knocked out in his career, never been submitted in his career. He has lost 5 fights by decision, but he's a guy that's going to go in there and look for the finish. And I think Sean Woodson might get a little bit uncomfortable with a taller, longer guy with the forward pressure coming at him, trying to take his head off. And if the fight goes to the ground, I think Padilla's got some nasty chokes. So I'm looking at this as like I think Padilla could probably get it done inside the distance. But if he doesn't, it's probably a Sean Woodson decision, just considering Woodson is, 8-0 to the decision and Padilla's 2-5. Kind of the writing's on the wall. It's either Padilla finish or it's a Woodson decision. Whoever implements their game, the better. So I'm leaning towards the dog here with Padilla at plus 146. One way you could go about it, it's probably a way that I will go about it, is Padilla inside the distance decision, no actions, where Padilla gets a finish, you cash your bet. Obviously, the odds aren't going to be plus 146, but you might get it at minus 130, minus 140, something like that. And if it goes to a decision, you just get your money back, because if it goes to a decision, it's probably going to be a Sean Woodson decision. But either way, I don't think Sean Woodson is the most durable guy. I don't think his strength of schedule is amazing. I look at his wins. Caceres, he's an older guy who's a decent kickboxer, but really needs to have some type of grappling success to compete with a good striker. Charles Jourdain was just so small in that spot. Like, Woodson just towered over him, and I actually bet on Woodson there. I can't believe we got plus 170 on Woodson against Jourdain. It's just insane. And then Bazooka is just so small. So, I think Padilla's bit can match his size, could put the pressure on him, make him get into some type of firefight where I think Padilla is more comfortable there, and maybe pull off a victory. So I'll take Padilla for the pick as well.
Here's the thing with that Caceres fight, dude. There's a lot of people that thought Sean Woodson lost. Like, that was in St. Louis, and it was unanimous decision. But when they said unanimous decision, like, the crowd, the energy kind of left. Like, I think they were thinking that was Alex Caceres getting his hand raised. And
it was a close fight. Like, all
super close.
I thought were pretty close. Like, they could have went either way. So 30-27 either way probably could have been true.
Yep. Yeah, close one.
Speaking of close, Drakkar Klose coming in at plus 250, taking on Joel Alvarez at minus 340. Joel been on a tear. Okay, the guy, he's him, bro. He's 6'3". He's 77-inch reach at 155. The guy is huge. He looked amazing his last time out against Elvis Brenner in a fight where I actually think I might have bet on Elvis Brenner.
I did too.
Some way or another, but that looked like a terrible bet at the end of the day. And he just looked very composed on the feet. He's a guy that has a ton of submissions on his record, but his striking looked amazing in that one. And Drakkar, on the other hand, a guy that's been around for a while, 15-2-1, and only 2 losses in the UFC. So, he's a very capable fighter, very solid striker, solid wrestling, solid takedown defense, just good overall. But he is 36, and, his wins most recently, they're okay. Joaquim Silva, it's decent. Joe Selecki, decent. Rafa Garcia, okay. Brandon Jenkins, not very good, but he did finish him there. I think his wins are fights that he should have won, and this is a fight that he's being set up to lose. I think he probably does. I think Joel Alvarez probably does get his hand raised in this one. At minus 340, I'm sure it's growing, and it probably will continue to grow because there's a lot on his side in this one. But what do you think of it?
Yeah, I think, for Drakkar Klose, he's got to be able to land some big shots in these fights at this stage to give himself a chance, because he does have good power, man. He's so fun to watch. And, quietly, this dude's racked up a 15-2 professional record. Like, that's impressive as hell. Like, the guy's a good fighter. But like you said, Joel Alvarez is him, dude. This dude, 6'3". He's got a 7-inch reach advantage, 4 or 5-inch height advantage. It's going to be hard for Drakkar to close the distance without taking punishment himself. And, even though he beat Joaquim Silva in his last fight, and Silva's older and doesn't have many great wins to his name lately, Silva's able to hurt Drakkar pretty badly at the end of the fight. And Drakkar is kind of just trying to hang on to get to that decision because he knew he won the first couple of rounds. So, Yeah, I think Alvarez just going to be a little bit too fast. The youth on his side, I think he's every bit as dangerous on the feet as Klose, but he's extremely dangerous with the grappling as well. If Klose wants to go to the wrestling, like he's got to watch his neck because Alvarez's long ass arms and grip strength and everything, like and skills on the ground, make him just as dangerous as on the feet. So for all those reasons, I think it's Joel Alvarez. I don't think this one sees the scorecards, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, Drakkara's been a guy that's tough to get out of there. So I've been finished once, and it was a knockout by Beneil to where Drakkara almost had Beneil out.
Yeah.
But I think Joel is a good spot for him to find another finish. I'm a big I talk to Drakkara sometimes here and there, and I love the guy. I think this is just such a tough matchup because is he going to outstrike Joel? Probably not. Based on the striking I saw last time against Elvis Brenner, I don't think he's going to outstrike him. So then he's going to have to mix in some type of grappling. I don't know if he's going to be able to shoot takedowns on Joel and stay safe. He's got a nasty guillotine, and even off his back, he's got nasty subs from there. And I look at Drakkara's UFC career. It's been put in some tough spots. Like even last time against Joaquim Silva, Silva put him in that guillotine, and what did he do? He like flung himself backwards. And I'm like, if that's Joel, he's probably finishing that sub. So I think it's a very tough fight for Drakkara. I'm going to pick Joel Alvarez to get this one done. And I do think he probably finds a submission here. And I just look at all the times that Drakkara's been put in bad spots. I think Joel probably finishes a good amount of those spots. So I'll take Joel by sub.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Silva dropping Drakkara like that, I feel like if that's Alvarez just jumps on the sub right away, jumps on the back after he gets him hurt type of thing. I could see a club and sub for sure here.
Moving on, we got Michael Johnson taking on Otman Azaitar. Azaitar comes in as the underdog at plus 162, Johnson minus 210. Johnson, been around for a long time. I mean, the guy is inching very, very close to a 500 record with 22 wins. Just the crazy career from Michael Johnson. Azaitar, been off for a while, 13-2 in his career. His last fight was Francisco Prado in July of 2023. He's been off for almost a year and a half at this point, and it was a brutal KO. Spinning back elbow, caught him, bloodied him up, and got TKO'd in the first. Dude's never been outside of the first round in the UFC. And Michael Johnson, even though he's only been knocked out in his career 3 times, we've seen him get knocked out in brutal fashion. That's kind of like the weird thing is like Michael Johnson has had some of the worst KO losses that we can remember, but he's only been knocked out 3 times. But he's been submitted 9 times. So like it's a very weird narrative about Michael Johnson is that like his chin is bad. It's not really the case. It's just when it goes on him, it looks really, really bad. So at minus 210, I'm always worried about that, getting chinned. But what do you think about this line? I mean, Azaitar really doesn't do much for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing Azaitar at plus 162, I think you might as well play his KO prop, if I'm being honest. I don't think he wins minutes here at all. I think the only way he wins is clipping Michael Johnson. Like, he could do it for sure. He's got power. I think out of his, what does he have? Like, I need to look at his record again. But most of his wins come by knockout. I just think, if he doesn't clip Michael Johnson, he's going to get boxed up. I think he get taken down. Kind of like we saw against with Michael Johnson against Darius Flowers, just kind of put Darius on his back, landed ground and pound, controlled him, got an easy decision win. Michael Johnson, though, man, it's just like you kind of mentioned it. The guy has some terrible losses on his record, but he's also got some crazy wins. Dustin Poirier. I mean, back in 2012, I believe, he beat Tony Ferguson before Tony Ferguson went on an insane run. Like the guy has fought Habib. It's like one of the only guys that actually have Habib hurt on the feet, I believe. If you go back and watch the fight, kind of clipped him real quick. And the guy's been in there with absolutely everybody. I don't think Azaitar is even not even close to the level of competition Michael has faced in the past. Just Michael is getting older. The chin's probably not as great as it once was. But I think the technique with the boxing and the striking is going to be good enough for him not to get hit. I think he will piece up Azaitar on the feet. I don't really know if Azaitar's cardio is going to be able to hold up to even, not that Michael Johnson has crazy power at this stage, but I think he could kind of melt him in this spot. I think if Azaitar starts eating shots to the body from Johnson and, can't find a big knockout, I think Johnson might be live kind of a round 2, round 3 type of deal here.
Yeah, give me MJ, man. Probably better cardio, better boxing, maybe even better durability. I mean, the chin could go on MJ, but I don't know that Azaitar is like the best striker. I mean, he's getting knocked out cold by Diego Ferreira. Very solid striker, very solid fighter overall. Josh Emmett put Bryce Mitchell into another dimension, and Justin Gaethje. So, I mean, I'll trust Michael Johnson on the feet against Adman Azaitar. I'll take him for the pick. Moving on, we got Navajo Sterling taking on Tokkos. Tuco coming in as the plus 350 dog. Sterling, the minus 520 favorite. Sterling gets the contract on the Contender Series after a round 2 left hook from hell, where he took that fight on short notice. I think he did. Yep. And he looked great. I mean, he's a city kickboxing guy at 205. He's probably one of the better strikers, even just coming into the UFC, because 205 is a pretty weak weight class. And Tokkos, 34 years of age, probably doesn't have the brightest future in the UFC, and I think he knows that. I met his debut against Umar C. Wasn't really much of a contest, got taken down and got subbed. And before that, he was fighting on the road to the UFC, and probably one of the worst lines ever created. He was like minus 600 against Ming Yang Zhang. He got sparked in the first round. Crazy look at that. But, I mean, he's a big dog here against Navajo Sterling, something I kind of expected. What do you think of the fight?
Yeah, I think, while it's on the feet, I think Navajo Sterling is going to be much better than him. Obviously, Sterling training with the city kickboxing team. You got great strikers in that camp. Olberg, Adesanya, I mean, all of those guys. He's just going to be better than Tokkos here. I mean, if Tokkos can mix in some grappling, maybe that's his path to victory here. I just don't really – I don't know. I feel like this guy is going to come in and just try to put on a show. I don't really think he's thinking about a game plan here. I think he's got to come in, and if he wants to win, I think that's how he's got to do it. I don't think he's going to win a technical fight against Navajo Sterling. So if he comes in, he's either going to land a big shot or find success early, or he's going to get clipped on the way in. As simple as that. I think 90% of the time he probably gets clipped by the better striker, a guy who's going to be have quite the reach advantage on him. I think he's going to eat kicks to the body while they're at range, kicks to the leg. I just don't really see this being competitive on the feet. I actually see Navajo Sterling probably finding the round 1, early round 2 knockout. So that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, from what I know about Tuco, great guy, funny guy, but he's married into a very wealthy family. So I don't believe that he has any title aspirations. I think this is just a fun thing for him to do. And like you said, just go out there and put on a fun fight. I'm sure they matched up Navajo with Tuco for a reason. They want to get their new signee a win who they see has some type of future. And for Tuco, what's his game plan here? Like you said, it's either go out there and throw caution to the wind or try to look to grapple this guy. And if he throws caution to the wind, I think Navajo is probably the better striker, and he'll make him pay for it. And for city kickboxing guys, they usually have very solid takedown defense. For wanting to be kickboxers in MMA, you're going to have some solid takedown defense. He's a big dude, long dude. He'll probably keep Tuco on the end of his punches, probably find a knockout. So Navajo Sterling is the pick for me. He probably finds another knockout.
So you're saying that Navajo came into Contender Series short notice? Is that right?
Yes.
See, that's interesting because, I thought watching my Contender Series, like, okay, this guy's a little more timid than I thought. Like, he's kind of having trouble pulling the trigger at times, kind of a little slower start. Like, maybe he's just game planning just to get that win, to get his chance in the UFC. Maybe he comes out here a little bit more aggressive too, which, could all point to an early finish on his side. I'll be interested to see what that round 1 KO line is.
Probably like plus 200, plus 180, somewhere around there. Yeah. We'll see. Moving on, we got Daniel Marcos taking on Adrian Yanez. Yanez comes in as a plus 144 dog. Marcos sits at minus 186. Marcos still undefeated after the win against John Castaneda. Really solid performance there. Yanez, 17-5, 30 years old, coming off the win against Vinicius Salvador, which was a massive step down in competition, but he passed it with flying colors. Before that, back-to-back losses to Jonathan Martinez and Rob Font. So he kind of faced the the fringe top 10 guys, got whooped, goes back to fighting the lower level guys, whoops them, and here he is facing probably a fringe top 15 guy in Daniel Marcos, who's still undefeated and has looked really good in the UFC. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Marcos is super underrated for being, undefeated like this with this many fights. His striking's really, really good. He mixes it up really well on the feet. Like for Yanez, everybody calls him a great boxer. I don't know if he's a great boxer as much as he is just a good power puncher. Like the guy gets hit a lot in every single fight, but a lot of times when he's fighting lower level guys, he can find that KO shot like he did it against Benicio Salvador. Tony Kelly, he did it against, not the greatest fighter in the world. Randy Costa has been cut by the UFC and bounced around these small organizations. But in that fight, man, Randy Costa was beating his ass in the first round, like just piecing him up with the kicks. It wasn't really looking good for Yanez a few moments early. And Yanez eventually got him in round 2. And then he's fighting Gustavo Lopez, Victor Rodriguez, guys that aren't really around anymore and aren't really going to jump off the radar at you. But, going up against a Daniel Marcos, he kind of reminds me with the kick game of Jonathan Martinez. Probably not as good, as powerful as Jonathan Martinez with leg kicks, but Marcos does a lot of damage with his kickboxing. I think that's going to be one thing that Yanez will struggle with here. And even with the hands, Marcos throws way more hands than Jonathan Martinez. I think it's going to catch him off guard. If Yanez can't crack Marcos early on the feet with the right hand, I think it's going to be a fight where he starts to get super frustrated. I think Marcos will start to open up more as the fight goes on, starts getting his timing down, gets his reads. It's going to be harder and harder for Yanez to land that right hand, all while he's taking leg kicks, body kicks, and combinations with the hands. So, yeah, I'm on Daniel Marcos here. I think Marcos is really good with the grappling defense too. Not that he's really going to need it here, but I just think he's going to turn into a really, really well-rounded fighter very, very soon. And I think he stays undefeated against Yanez.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I think Yanez doesn't really do that well when he faces some type of kicking threat. A guy that has really solid kicks in Daniel Marcos, but also has pretty solid hands. And for Yanez, he needs to kind of be in the pocket and let his hands go. And Marcos uses his movement pretty well. I think it's going to be tough for Yanez to have success with his hands because Marcos is just going to continue to move, continue to kick, continue to circle, and find his angles. So I'm with you. I think Daniel Marcos probably wins this one. I could see it going to a decision to where Marcos is keeping his range, landing the better shots. Yanez is getting frustrated a little bit, trying to push the action. But that Jonathan Martinez Yanez fight was just a big eye opener for me. It's like Yanez, I don't want to say stupid, but like, Jonathan Martinez is going to be throwing kicks, right? Like he's not going to just stop throwing kicks because he's fighting you.
Yeah.
He just literally got his leg chewed up from the jump and he had no answer. So I'm like, how can I ever have confidence in this guy to have a decent game plan? Because he went into a fight against a pretty much 100% kicker and just got his legs kicked. Very weird. And the win against Benicio Salvador, saw from coming from a mile away. Like that's a guy that Yanez can knock out. Yanez can knock out a lot of guys. We'll see if it's Daniel Marcos. I mean, he's undefeated, obviously never been knocked out, never lost. So I'll stick with Daniel Marcos for the pick. At near minus 200, I don't know if a ton because there's a possibility for Yanez to win this fight, but I would favor Marcos and minus 200. It's okay, but we'll see.
I feel like Yanez has like a panic button. Like when he gets hit hard, it's like he goes into panic mode and he's got to get that shot back and he comes in wild, just trying to land that big right hand. And, not only is Marcos kind of like similar to Jonathan Martinez where he's really measured and calculated, but I mean, if you come in trying to brawl him, like he's not really scared to plant down and hit you either. He's not going to just, shy away from a few exchanges like that until he gets back into range. So, yeah, if Yanez starts getting pieced up, I could honestly see Marcos finding the chin and putting him out, especially as the fight goes on if he chews the leg up.
All right, moving on. We got your boy, Dustin Jacoby.
Let's go, Dustin.
Sitting at plus 215 against Vitor Petrino. Sitting at minus 290. Obviously, Petrino coming off, I would say, a very, very poor performance against Anthony Smith, to where the Anthony Smith loss does not age gracefully. And Dustin Jacoby coming off the loss to Dominic Reyes. I guess you could say at age is okay, but either way, he has not had a great run as of lately. So you got a veteran that is on the downslope and a contender, I guess a prospect you should call him, probably not a contender, a prospect who suffered his first loss in embarrassing fashion, and he's the favorite. What do you think?
I think if this fight was 2 or 3 years ago, I think Jacoby would have a lot of success staying at range using his kicks because Petrino's not a guy that throws a lot of volume or anything. Like, yeah, he's got power in the hands, but I mean, he went into a decision with Tyson Pedro. I mean, he knocked out Modescus Bukauskas with that left hand, but dude, through the first, I forget if it was like how long it lasted in the second round, not very long. Like through the 6 minutes of the fight, Petrino landed like 8 significant strikes. Like this guy's not landing volume whatsoever. I mean, he took down Marcin Prachniow. Congrats. He got the sub late in the fight, but didn't really. I don't know. It was kind of it took him a while to get to that arm triangle position, and it seemed like it was right in front of him the whole time. I mean, I think this guy still is getting better and better. He's built like a brick house. This dude's pretty intimidating to look at. Wrestling wise, I don't know if he's the best wrestler in the world. I think he's just super strong, and he can get to your hips. He's going to take you down. Honestly, while this fight's at range, if Jacoby can just not take big shots, I think he's going to win the volume battle. Like I think he's going to outstrike him by 3-1 in striking wise. I don't think he's going to get outclassed on the feet whatsoever. I think the length and the reach and the kicks are really going to play a big part of it. Just Dustin can't come out gun shy. I feel like he's been gun shy early in fights lately, and it kind of takes him to get rocked until he's like figures, all right, now I got to really start letting my hands go. Feel like he's been really, really timid lately. And if he comes out here like he's got nothing to lose, he is a little bit older. I don't really think he's going to go on a title run at this age. Losing his last 3 or 4 or 4 out of 5 or whatever it is. So if he just comes out here to fight, man, I think that's what he's got to do, and just avoid the big shots and let the hands go. And if the takedown defense holds up, I think it's a closer fight. I got to ride with my boy Dustin Jacoby. He's the hometown kid. He's from where I'm from. Plus 215. I bet this gets up to like plus 350 by the end of the week. If I'm being honest, I think Vitor Petrino is going to be heavily parlayed. And I wish Jacoby had that submission game to grab up a guillotine like Anthony Smith. But I don't really see Jacoby knocking out Petrino. I do see him having better striking exchanges and more volume. He just has to watch out for the big left and right hand.
Yeah, I mean, if Jacoby had some durability left, I would be more inclined.
And everybody, I am super biased. Like this is a super biased pick. So if you're like betting based off my advice in this fight, I would just lay off because I'll probably lay off. I don't like betting on fights that fighters I know. So
yeah, it's just the durability seems to have left him based on his last 4 fights where he got dropped 4 times and knocked out in one of them. Probably should have been knocked out in more than one of them. Petrino, I'm not like a super big believer. I think the guy is stupid, and that was pretty evident by his last performance, going for the takedown and sticking his head into a guillotine where he was like minus 500 or something like that to Anthony Smith. And you even saw glimpses of it earlier in his career when he was taking down Anton Turkalj 7 times after having him on death's door with his fists. Like, what are you doing? And even on his Contender Series fight, he got dropped in the first round by Adolfo Bellato. Bellato's not a good striker. So I think there's a lot of holes in Vitor Petrino's game, and he's been able to get through it just based on being bigger, being stronger, being more athletic, and doesn't really fight a high-risk game. Like, he's not going in there just throwing haymakers. He's very low volume. He'll just stick to a jab, stick to a low kick, stick to a left hook, and mix in some takedowns. So I think there's a world to where Dustin Jacoby is able to rack up some volume on him if he has the confidence in his chin to actually let his hands go, let his kicks go. But I think Vitor, with the grappling upside, will probably eventually shoot a takedown, have some success getting Jacoby to the ground, and win rounds that way or submit him on the ground. And then there's always the possibility he could knock him out on the feet because Vitor does hold a lot of power, but I don't think it's not like a thought out process of like, I'm going to jab to the body, and then I'm going to go upstairs. It's kind of just like, I'll just react to what he's throwing, and this left hook might land and it might knock him out. So we'll see. But I think Vitor Petrino gets this one done. I think there's just more ways for him to win, probably more durable. And the zero submission threat for Jacoby is, I mean, I shouldn't say it's zero because he's probably working on his jiu-jitsu and everything, but Anthony Smith does have solid jiu-jitsu, solid guillotine. So just don't stick your head in anything crazy. And I think Vitor Petrino gets a win here. Moving on. Feature bout of the night. We got Manel Kape taking on Bruno Silva. And I will tell you, when I saw this line, I was pretty shocked. I believe it has grown to where Bruno Silva is plus 300 to Manel Kape. And based on looking at that, I look at it and say Bruno Silva at plus 300 is pretty enticing, just considering the guy has crazy solid knockout power for 125. Solid submission game, solid wrestling game. But on the other side, Manel Kape, he's probably going to be faster, probably going to be a little bit more durable. He's a guy that's doesn't really get finished at all. And he's probably just going to be the better striker overall. So I can understand why he is the favorite. But in my opinion, this line is a little bit wide. And considering Manel Kape does have the tendency at times to be low volume, not throw a ton out there. Minus 365 where it is now. I'm not touching that. What do you think?
No, I'm not either. And that's like when I first saw this fight announced and on the card without seeing the lines, I'm like, okay, Manel Kape should win this fight. But then you watch the Makayev fight, and Manel Kape, like you said, when he is low volume, it's like he's super gun shy or timid or something. Like I think if Bruno comes in and just shoots for a takedown or two, give him something to think about, just get some of that volume out of Manel Kape's game early. I don't think Bruno Silva is like a terrible striker whatsoever. I mean, the guy has some power in his hands. We saw against Cody Durden. Did you see what Joshua Van did to Cody Durden in round 2 and 3 and couldn't get them out of there? Like Bruno Silva hit Cody Durden with an uppercut that made the mouthpiece go flying 10 feet into the stands and then finished him, had his eyes rolling back. So, Bruno's a dog. He's got power in the hands. He's got the ground game too. I think this fight is way closer and then what these odds are showing, especially since Kape is growing and growing as the favorite. He's getting steamed. And, honestly, I think people are just probably parlaying him. They're looking for spots on this card with a lot of bigger favorites. They think Kape, Kape has like a weird aura about him where people just always think he's going to win these fights. Like, in here against Felipe dos Santos, he was getting touched up in some spots against a debuter who's like 22 years old or whatever he was at the time. And Manel Kape's beaten some guys like Ode Osborne by knockout, Zhalgas Zumagulov, guys who are either on the verge of being cut or like Zhalgas have been cut. Everybody else, David Dvorak, decision, Felipe dos Santos debut decision, loses to Mateus Nicolau by split decision, and then Pantoja, that's a pretty good, lost age as well. But I don't know, man. Other than that, you look at some of these wins he's had, he's not really knocking people out that are better fighters like a Bruno Silva. So if he doesn't get the knockout, I think he's going to get hit at times. And if he doesn't get the volume going, it's going to go down to the wire and be a close fight. So I think it's a dog or pass from a betting perspective. I do think Kape's speed will, if he gets the hands going, will give Bruno Silva trouble. But I think it's pretty close.
Yeah. And the reason he's low volume at times is because he's a counter striker. Like Makayev's not throwing anything at him, so he's not throwing anything.
Right.
Mateus Nicolau's not throwing anything first, so he's barely throwing anything. He loses a split there. Bruno Silva, I don't know, he's not really a counter striker, but he is a guy that kind of waits for his opportunity. So I think this fight could actually turn out to be a staring match for a good amount of time. But Bruno Silva does have a big power, solid grappling, dangerous once the fight hits the ground. But I do think Manel Kape will probably just be sharper on the feet. And I don't really think Silva's going to have a ton of grappling success here just because Manel, the way he was stuffing Makayev shots, like I don't think Bruno Silva's getting in on his hips and holding him down for that long. So I'll take Manel Kape for the pick. I don't love the line just considering he can be low volume at times. His best win in the UFC is David Dvorak. Bruno Silva has cashed for me a good amount of times. Last time out cashed for me inside the distance at like plus 300 or something like that. And round 2 finish at plus 1,000. And I was actually in Tampa when that bet hit. So I'll be in Tampa this Saturday. So maybe Bruno Silva can do it for me again in Tampa. Not saying I'm going to bet on him, but either way, I do have a lot of love for Bruno Silva. So I don't know if I could fade him, but Manel Kape will be the pick. Co-main event, we got Cub Swanson at plus 134. Billy Q comes back at minus 172. Couple of weathered fighters. Cub Swanson, 41 years of age. Billy Q, 35. And they are always going to bring the action. I think it's a decent spot for them to be in the co-main event, just considering Cub, what he's done for the sport. Legend of the game. He's an underdog here. Billy Q, he's always going to come bring a scrap. He's a Tampa guy. Solid co-main event. What do you think?
Yeah, this one's actually really tough for me to call. I haven't really liked what I've seen out of Billy Q. I mean, the loss is Yusuf Zalal doesn't age terrible just because Zalal is, kind of turned a corner in his career, and he's looked really good against some guys. He's finding finishes now. He's on a win streak. Billy Q beat Damon Jackson before that. Damon Jackson just went out and got submitted by a 41-year-old Jim Miller. Didn't look very good there. And then, he eats that knee that we were in attendance for against Edson Barbosa and goes out early in the first round. He's taking a lot of damage, for one. He is a volume guy. He likes to fight deeper into fights and drag his opponents into deep water. But I've kind of seen Cub start to shine in those later moments, like against Andre Fili. Like, this guy kind of just has that no quit in him. He beat Hakeem Dawodu by unanimous decision, which was, I don't know, man. I thought it was a robbery. I think a lot of people there did too. But, he's able to hang with a younger fighter like that. Loses to Jonathan Martinez from the nasty leg kicks. Billy Q's not going to be landing any of that. Knocks out Darren Elkins, gets the finish in round 1. Impressive. I mean, Cub's got some fight left in him, and Billy Q does too. Billy Q is, regardless of getting finished, the guy is tough. And, if you drag it into deep waters with him, he's not going to quit. You kind of got to put the lights out or choke him out to, or else he's going to, even if you drop him once, he's going to keep coming at you. I'm tempted on Cub here, though. I just think Cub, skill for skill, is going to be way more technical. It's not like Billy's going to hit him with shots early that are really going to drain Cub in this fight. Like, I think Cub's fought harder hitters lately and have kind of taken him to the brink, like in his last fight against Andre Fili. So yeah, if Cub can get going early and just win that, first round convincingly, and then just give yourself a chance to win the second or the third, I don't think Billy Q's finishing Cub here. So, if Cub can do that, I think he's super live to win the fight.
Yeah, I mean, if you like Billy, you're probably better off taking him live because the dude literally loses like every first round if he's not getting finished. I can't think of a time where he won a first round in recent memory. So that's not a good look. He's going to drop a round, so you probably want to take him live if you like the Billy Q side. Cub, on the other hand, I think he just needs to bring a solid gas tank into this one because I think he'll be the better striker. I think he can counter wrestle if Billy Q is going to be looking to wrestle. And I think he might just have enough in the first 10 minutes to win those rounds. And then once it hits the third round, we know Billy Q wants to turn it up. And he's just got to survive those five minutes. So, yeah, I'm kind of lean Cub Swanson for the pick just because he is the underdog here. And I know he's probably going to win the first round. And I actually bet on him against Andre Fili, and I thought we had a real solid chance to win that fight, which was a split decision. He was like plus 250, plus 240.
He was yeah. Same with Hakeem, I believe.
Plus 185. I think I got him at like plus 200 though. I wouldn't play him lesser than plus 200, but yeah, I mean, I think Andre Fili's better than Billy Q.
I do too.
And obviously you're not getting the same number, but I think Cub can win this fight. I do think he's probably got a little bit left in him, but Billy Q he's a guy that's going to make you work for it. He's going to make you earn it. And if Cub's not up for that task, then easily Billy could take over and finish him late or just pull off the decision. But for now, I'll take Cub Swanson for the pick. To the main event, got Colby Covington at plus 200. Take it on. Joaquin Buckley at minus 265, and that line continues to grow. Buckley is 30 years of age. Colby Covington is 36. And there's a reason I read that. Because when you look at Colby Covington's career, looked at it before the show. Obviously, he lost his last fight to Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards is younger than Colby Covington? I had to go back to Brian Barberina in 2016. That's the last time Colby Covington beat a fighter that was younger than him. 2016. Brian Barberina was 27 years of age. Colby Covington was 28. It's been over 8 years since Colby Covington beat a fighter that was younger than him. Those wins against old men, Dong Hyun Kim, Damian Maia, Rafael Dos Anjos, Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley, Jorge Masvidal. Who's left? RDA is the only one left, and RDA is a shell of himself. He's getting hurt in fights now, blowing out his knee. Colby's at plus 200. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be liking that. Personally, I think he's shot. I don't think he stands much of a chance in this one outside of an absolute juice fest of him just getting on the gear, getting all of his health problems back into a good spot. Like he was out for a long time, comes back and fights Leon. He looks terrible. He says he broke his foot in the first round. Okay, he had another injury after a long layoff. And then he comes back a year later and he's supposed to face a surging 30-year-old in Joaquin Buckley, who used to fight at 185. They're the same height. He's got a longer reach. He's more athletic. He's in his prime. Real knockout power. I think Buckley smokes him, honestly. I mean, I think the only way that Colby wins this fight is some fluke head kick. Because I don't really see him having a lot of wrestling success. Like, I just don't see it. I just don't see Colby coming out hot, pushing a pace, taking over early. Obviously, he could win rounds 4 or 5 if it gets there. But I think Buckley's got him covered. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel very similar. The one thing with Buckley I look at is that when he fought at 185 pounds, he was 5-4, and then drops down to 170. Has kind of found his game. He's found his style, and he's 5-0 at welterweight. And that's a pretty good win streak. And on the feet, man, he's going to be the better striker, way more explosive with the striking, has tons more power. Like if anybody's winning striking exchanges or doing damage, it's going to be Buckley here. And then it's not like he's the worst grappler in the world. Colby, I think if he wants a chance to win this fight, is going to have to come in with a wrestling heavy game plan off the jump and stay on it for 5 rounds. It's just like that should have been what he did against Leon too, and he just didn't do it until the last 5 minutes of the fight. I mean, you just can't really trust him. At this point in his career, I mean, beating Buckley's not really going to jump you up into a title shot, in my opinion. I think Colby might just be here to put on fun fights, high-paced fights, and try to stick to where he can fight in these main events against guys and get paid. I don't really think, even if he does go for the wrestling heavy game plan, I don't think he has as much success as he did against a older Jorge Masvidal. Like Buckley's 30 years old. This guy is super strong for this division. He's going to be harder to take down and hold down, and he's going to make you pay on the feet. And, I look at Colby's Instagram. I was just kind of trying to see what's he been doing leading up to this fight. 0 training on his Instagram for the last 6 months. I mean, it's just all pictures on the golf course, pictures in his MAGA hat at, various locations or rallies across the U.S. I just don't know if he's really into it anymore, man, if I'm being honest. And I think Buckley has serious title run aspirations, and it all kind of kicks off with Colby Covington here. So, yeah, I think Buckley does get the job done. I do think Colby can steal a round or two, especially later in the fight, because his cardio always has been good. He will dog through it, and he'll try to drag you into deeper waters if he can. But I just think early on he's going to get tagged a lot, and he has taken some damage in his career, especially in those fights against Kamaru Usman. He was just getting jabbed up and broken jaw and finished by TKO. If Buckley starts touching him up, I could see similar things happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think I'm worried about the cardio aspect. I don't think Colby's pace is going to be good enough to where Buckley is worn down by the 4th or the 5th. And Buckley, for how jacked he looks, never shown any signs of slowing down in the 3rd round. He knocked out Wonder Boy in the 3rd round. His last fight. He knocked down Ruzaboyev in the 3rd round and landed 60 significant strikes. Vicious ground and pound. he was ragged on Morono in the 3rd round. Like, he even put a pace on Imavov in the 3rd round at 185, and Imavov is going to be fighting for a title real soon. Like, I think Buckley's got this one done, and I think Buckley probably could knock him out in the first 3 rounds just because I think Buckley is that dangerous. I mean, if Kape can't get takedowns, Kape doesn't have the striking to match Buckley. He doesn't have the power to match Buckley. He doesn't have the striking defense really either. It's not like he's going to be sticking to the outside and stuff. He's a brawling, I don't even want to say boxer, but he's just a brawler to get into the takedown. And I think Buckley would probably make him pay. So give me Buckley by KO. And, Kape enters that phase of his career where all the title aspirations are out the window.
Dude, if Buckley knocks Kape out, though, like, dude, he becomes a star in the UFC. Like, he's got the personality. He's got the win streak. Knocks out Kape, especially in, like, crazy fashion. Like, Buckley's he's going to skyrocket.
Yeah, I mean, just think, like, this is a prime Buckley.
Yeah. Oh,
he
yeah.
Found his new weight class. He's 30 years old. He's on a 5-fight win streak, probably more than that. And Kobe's only win against a guy that's younger than him is 2016 Barbarina. Like, come on. I know the line has gotten pretty wide. I got it at a better number, but I do have a big bet on Buckley, so I'm all in on Buckley this week. I'll be there live in attendance, hopefully watching him KO Kape. And I like Kape. I mean, Kobe's a good guy, but I think he's a good guy. That's what people tell me that have met him. But at the end of the day, he probably doesn't put out that he's a good guy. But from the people that I know that have met Kape or know Kape,
yeah,
he's a good guy. So
it's like a soft-spoken dude.
Yeah,
he's like kind of quieter.
Yeah, I hope one day I'll be at the Hard Rock and I see Kape, or I'm like playing poker at the Hard Rock and I'm playing poker with Kape Covington. It'd be funny. Yeah. But all right, those are the picks. Those are the breakdown for UFC Tampa. If you're there, hit me up. We can chop it up. I'll be down on the floor. That's where our seats are. I'll be at the Hard Rock in Tampa as well. So if you see me there, give me a shout. Stay up to date with everything at Home of Picks on IG. If you want the bets, there's a link down in the description. Home of Fight Picks premium membership. The final week of UFC in 2024. Jump in there, get the bets. We're hot off of UFC 310. At HeyJai Picks on the medias for me. Where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
Appreciate you for watching. Until next time, HeyJai Picks and the Parlay, the double leg. Signing out.